Hi, it's Katrina. The Hittite Civilization, an archaeological discovery made over 100 years ago, has been the source of some recent controversy. It involves the ancient biblical society of the Hittites, with experts now saying that proof of the Hittite civilization validates the historical record of the Bible, seeing as the Hittites are mentioned repeatedly throughout both the Hebrew and Christian Bibles. Historians have argued for many years over the existence of the Hittite, or at least their relationship with the biblical scripts. There simply hasn't been enough archaeological evidence to prove they ever existed. The Hittites were mentioned in the Old Testament at least 50 times. Then, in the early 1900s, German archaeologist Hugo Winkler heard of mysterious clay tablets found by looters in Turkey. He organized excavations in the area between 1906 and 1912, finding sculptures, temples, and a fortified tower. Even though the German archaeologists believed these ruins belonged to the Hittite civilization, there was no definitive proof. It wasn't until Hugo discovered what he believed was once a royal archive room filled with over 10,000 ancient clay tablets that the truth came to life. These tablets were deciphered by a Czech professor at the University of Vienna in 1915, at which point it was announced to the world that this ancient site was once the capital city of the Hittite kingdom, and that they had been known throughout history by another name, the Hattusha. But here's where the controversy, skepticism, and doubt came into play. Even though this discovery was made so long ago, people still argue against the Hittite culture ever being represented in the Bible. Some claim the Bible is talking about a completely different civilization of people with a similar name. Unfortunately, there is no way to tell which civilization is depicted in the Bible. Scientists don't even know what became of these people, where they came from, or why their capital was abandoned. Stonehenge Builders. Stonehenge is one of the most iconic archaeological and historical sites in the world. But who really built Stonehenge? They are known as the Builders. But even though this place is perhaps one of the most studied places on Earth, there is still much we don't know about what Stonehenge really is, or the people who made it. It was definitely a burial ground and had great spiritual and religious significance. It took a lot of people a lot of effort to build this place between 3000 and 2000 BC, and some of these stones were brought from hundreds of miles away. Archaeologists are still debating what Stonehenge represents. Its alignment with the stars and the human remains indicate it had a lot to do with the dead and with astronomy, serving as a type of calendar. It also appears to have been a very important gathering place for ancient people. A popular belief is that Stonehenge was built by Druid priests, or perhaps by the wizard Merlin himself. Most recent DNA analysis shows that ancestors of the people who built Stonehenge traveled west across the Mediterranean to get to Britain. Neolithic Britons were farmers and had dark skin and blue or green eyes, and brought the tradition of building monuments using large stones. Towards the end of the Neolithic era, the farmers were replaced by another new population known as the Bell Beaker people, who migrated from inland Europe. They had lighter skin with dark eyes. Something happened, and the Neolithic cultures began to collapse. The first mummy. The first mummy in the world was not made where you think. Instead, the first corpse to be wrapped in bandages and preserved through the process of mummification came from South America, near what is today the border of southern Peru and northern Chile. The people who made the first mummy are known as the Chinchorro culture, and they date back over 7,000 years. The oldest mummy ever discovered was a person who died in the year 5050 BC. To give a rough comparison, that's 2,000 years before the first Egyptian mummy. Even more amazing is that the Chinchorro people actually created mummies by accident several thousand years earlier. By simply burying their dead in a very dry environment in the desert, their dead loved ones naturally turned into mummies all on their own 9,000 years ago. The Chinchorro lived in one of the driest places on Earth. Some areas of the desert here haven't seen rain in over 400 years. So how was the first legit mummy made? It's oddly similar to how Egyptians made their mummies. The first step was to remove the organs. The brain, heart, and all the gushy stuff inside the body was taken out. Next, the hair and skin were scraped off using a primitive stone tool, or sometimes a knife made from a pelican's beak. Next, they would remove the appendages, sometimes decapitating and dismembering the dead person and drying out all their limbs before stitching them back together. The body was then dried using smoke from hot coals from a fire. And lastly, the dried remains were filled with straw and feathers, the skin was covered in clay, The body would be painted in black or red, and then it was stuffed into the ground to be buried and preserved for eternity. Mayan megacity. Deep in the Guatemalan jungle in 2018, scientists discovered tens of thousands of Mayan structures, including houses, defense works, pyramids, agricultural fields, and irrigation systems. Factoring in this newfound megacity, experts estimate that up to 10 million people once lived throughout the Maya lowlands, between 2 and 3 times as many as they originally thought. The discoveries were made using LiDAR, or light detection and ranging technology, which detects structures hidden beneath dense foliage. Thanks to this capability, the team didn't have to go trekking through the jungle with machetes. They identified around 60,000 structures spanning an 810 square mile area, including 4 major ceremonial centers containing pyramids and plazas. Additional evidence shows that the land was heavily cultivated in order to feed the burgeoning Maya population. Maintaining these farmlands required a massive, highly organized workforce. These findings show that the Mayan civilization was far more advanced and powerful than it has long been given credit for. Thanks to technologies like LiDAR, scientists can more efficiently identify long-lost sites, sparing them the time and energy of guessing where they think something might be and cutting through the dense jungle to get there, with no fathomable clue about their chances of finding anything. Cradle of Civilization. In 2001, a flood in Iran exposed the ancient ruins of a necropolis built by a previously forgotten Bronze Age culture. According to National Geographic, this culture flourished at the same time as Mesopotamia, in the Cradle of Civilization. The discovery of the ruins was a complete accident. The thing is that in 2001, a slew of mysterious archaeological objects showed up online and through local antiquities markets. There were weapons, pieces of ceramics, drinking vessels, jewelry, and even ancient board games. All these artifacts were decorated with unusual images in a style that archaeologists didn't quite recognize. There were also mini reproductions of temples and palaces that didn't look familiar. It turned out the exposed ruins were found by locals way before archaeologists caught wind of it. This meant they were stealing all the artifacts they could find from the site, literally beating the experts to the punch. By the time the Iranian police finally figured out what was happening later on in 2002, the site had already been pillaged. Artifacts were getting shipped out of Tehran to secret buyers all over the world. Now, even though the ruins have been found by archaeologists, many artifacts are lost and will probably never be recovered. They also have no idea who built the ancient necropolis, though they say it was definitely a culture uniquely different from Mesopotamia, yet not far from the more famous kingdom's borders. The Mississippians. Between 800 and 1600 AD, a Native American civilization called the Mississippians thrived throughout much of the United States. They built a trade network of loosely connected urban villages and satellite settlements, many of which contained large earthen platform mounds. The architecture varied by region, but the settlements were tied to a common culture and belief system centered around ritual game playing. As far as experts know, the Mississippians did not have any stone architecture or a writing system. The culture originated in the Mississippi River Valley. Its largest city and religious center, Cahokia, was located in what is now southern Illinois. The extensive Mississippian trade network stretched as far west as the Rocky Mountains, east to the Atlantic Ocean, north to the Great Lakes, and south to the Gulf of Mexico. Mississippians differed from other Native American societies in numerous ways. They intensively farmed maize and had a complex chiefdom and social structure, which led to a level of inequality that was seemingly absent from other Native American cultures. The civilization peaked between 1200 and 1400, at which point it began to decline. Warfare and political turmoil increased, prompting many of Cahokia's residents to leave. By 1500, most factions of the Mississippian culture had dispersed or were in severe distress. Very few settlements were still around when Native Americans and Europeans came into contact for the first time. Several modern indigenous groups are thought to descend from the Mississippians, including the Alabama, Appalachee, Chickasaw, Choctaw, Osage, and Seminole, just to name a few. Giraff culture. In the 3rd millennium BC, during the early Bronze Age, a civilization perhaps as great as Sumer and ancient Mesopotamia lived in what is now Iran. Surrounded by tall, rugged mountains on 3 sides in the Halil River Valley, The mysterious culture built a sprawling urban settlement consisting of 2 large burial mounds, a fortified citadel, and numerous smaller buildings. It is here that they lived, practiced their religion, and crafted fine artifacts like vases and statuettes, enjoying a sophisticated lifestyle and social hierarchy for their time. For unknown reasons, after peaking sometime between 2500 BC and 2200 BC, this and other settlements belonging to the civilization were ultimately abandoned, covered in dirt, and forgotten. The sites were rediscovered in the early 20th century and were unfortunately looted along with being formally excavated a handful of times. With limited artifacts to learn from, experts know very little about what they call the Giraff people beyond having established that they were a distinct group with their own architecture, language, beliefs, and a writing system consisting of geometric figures. Some researchers believe that the society may very well be one of the cradles of civilization. The Land of Punt. The Land of Punt has been a mystery to archaeologists for over 150 years. Not many people know about this ancient culture, but it's equally as mysterious as Eden or Atlantis. Until just recently, the Land of Punt was nothing more than a legend. It wasn't until archaeologists took a look at some mummified baboons that they were able to pinpoint the location of Punt on a map, thereby verifying its actual existence. The mummified baboons were found in Egypt, but their DNA actually came from the exotic land known as Punt. Historians know about the land because of references to it written in ancient Egypt, with the Egyptians describing it as an exotic place of great wealth and power, and one of their main trading partners. As for the baboons, they were actually worshipped by the ancient Egyptians. Nobody knows why, seeing as they didn't even live anywhere near Egypt, but nonetheless, they acquired the baboons from the mysterious Land of Punt, then occasionally sacrificed them and turned them into mummies. By checking out the strontium isotopes in the mummies, archaeologists accidentally found out that the baboons came from somewhere around modern Ethiopia. This was likely the location for the civilization of Punt, somewhere around 2480 BC. No physical evidence of the civilization has been uncovered, but the DNA from the baboons said it almost certainly existed. Cucuteni Tripilians. The Neolithic Cucuteni Tripilian culture rose to prominence around 5500 BC. Its people settled across parts of what is now Eastern Europe, including modern-day Russia, Moldova, and Ukraine. Between 4000 BC and 3500 BC, the Cucuteni Tripilians built Neolithic Europe's largest settlements, with populations numbering between 20,000 and 46,000 people. The civilization burned its settlements down every 60 to 80 years and often built new structures at the same site. For example, the Păduri site in Romania contains 13 layers of remains from settlements that were destroyed and buried by new buildings. Researchers have no clue why the Cucuteni Tripilians did this, but it limited the amount of artifacts they left behind. The civilization also left no signs of a written language. As a result, experts have very little to learn about them. The few artifacts that were found intact include clay totems, copper tools, and spiritual objects. Cucuteni Tripilian settlements were first discovered during the late 19th century. Recent findings reveal that the obscure culture played a bigger role in human advancement than it's given credit for. But because of their habit of destroying the evidence, we'll probably never know the true extent of their knowledge and capabilities. Can you imagine burning your house down every 60 years and having to rebuild it? Let me know in the comments below. Ayutthaya. Located north of Bangkok in what is now central Thailand, the ancient Siamese capital of Ayutthaya was once one of the world's richest cities. It was founded in 1531 by King Yu Thong, who sought refuge there from a smallpox outbreak as the second Siamese capital after Sukhothai. This strategically situated metropolis was built on an island that was surrounded by 3 rivers leading to the sea. Ayutthaya flourished between the 14th and 18th centuries as a global center of diplomacy and commerce. During its heyday, the city contained roads, canals, gilded temples, palaces filled with treasure, and an advanced water management system. An estimated 300,000 residents lived there by the year 1600, and experts believe the population may have numbered as many as 1 million by the 18th century. In 1767, the Burmese army sacked Ayutthaya, causing the kingdom to collapse and its inhabitants to flee. The invaders set fire to the capital, and because many of the city's structures were made from wood, much of its architecture was lost in the blaze. All that's left of Ayutthaya are the 50 or so stone relics and temples that survived the fire. The ruins consist of the city's reliquary towers or prang, as well as large monasteries which stand as the few remaining testaments to the kingdom's former splendor. Although there is relatively little to see today, Ayutthaya is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Thanks for watching! Which place was your favorite? Which place would you visit if you could? Let me know in the comments below, and be sure to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. See you next time! Bye!